Joining us for this week's bonus Conversations on the Coast is author Autumn Stevens. And she's here not to talk about a book she wrote all by herself, but a book that she edited. It has a wonderfully interesting title, Roar Softly and Carry a Great Lipstick. And the subtitle is 28 Women Writers on Life, Sex, and Survival. And it is published by Inner Ocean Publishing, which, among other things, has an office in Hawaii. Isn't that true?
That is true. I keep hoping that I need an important face-to-face meeting with my editor, but so
you haven't had that yet.
Yeah, still to come.
An author that we've had on this program, one Terry Ryan, who wrote a book called The Prize Winner of Defiance, Ohio, says of this collection, these stories moved me from laughter to tears and back again, an unforgettable testament to what women experience and rise above in the 21st century. And those things that women, rise above are quite varied, and I want to get to them. But, the first thing I guess you had to do is give these authors some kind of instructions.
I did, and I actually gave them fairly vague instructions, which is really a good idea when dealing with authors anyway, because they normally do whatever they want anyway.
You got that right.
But I wanted to write a book about, or, produce a book about what's the truth of the experience that women have in facing problems, the truth about what the problems are, and then the truth about how they overcome those problems or how they learn to live with them, whatever their strategy is for that. So basically, I said, please write about a challenge that you've had in your life and how you overcame it.
Yeah, and in a sense, it's a challenge that has some kind of what you might call a universality to it, that other women today or other people today would also be facing.
Right, but I didn't want to tell them what the challenge was. I wanted to find that out, and so they, had carte blanche to write about whatever it was they, either was a one of the thing that came to their mind, the deepest challenge, or, maybe something that they weren't embarrassed to say, or in some cases things that, perhaps they were embarrassed to say but felt it needed to be said anyway.
Well, here's what they came back with, and I guess we should say this is a partial list. Surviving anorexia, shrugging off the ravages of middle age, a lot about that one, I would say. Coping with physical disability, toughing out postpartum depression, transcending fear of authority, rejecting motherhood. And that's a really tough essay. I read that one. Resisting marriage, mourning a loved one, ruining missed opportunities, fighting infertility, embracing lesbianism, fleeing an abusive spouse, clinging tightly to cherished friends, buying a house on a womanly writerly salary. Now, there's a challenge. And, oh yes, desperately seeking sex at 20 or 40 or 50. And you add sobering topics, most of these. So you really did give them free rein, didn't you?
Yes, and one thing that I found interesting was just in the list of topics that you just described, nobody chose to write about their work life. It was all subjective, personal relationships, or it was something about their body, either their body, or their personality amid other personalities, but nobody wrote about work. And I just thought that was so interesting in terms of what the deepest issues that we have in our lives really are.
I hadn't thought of that going through the book, but it seems to me if one wanted to reflect on that, one could say there's a message there. What is it that really concerns a woman today? And because we're so familiar with women in the workplace, one might be inclined to say, well, it's got to be the workplace.
Right, and it's not to say that the workplace is not important and that, there aren't still important issues to be worked out about just how women fit into the work world, or for that matter, how men fit into the work world.
Sure.
Maybe nobody should fit into the work world, but it's just, I think one of those things like the cliche, like normally when people, the deathbed cliche, when somebody's dying, they don't normally think, oh, I should have put in more overtime at the office. They think about like relationships that perhaps they can cultivate or, whatever.
Sure. Well, as you started to put this book together, you realized that it could be divided into sections that reflect, I think, as you said before, the various strategies that the writers chose to cope with whatever they were looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And those subcategories are connection, turning to others in times of trouble, attitude adjustment, and that's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Mind over matter, taking a spiritual approach to problem solving. Mm-hmm. And then one of my favorites, problem. What problem? Coping by redefining problems as non-problems. That's a kind of an optimistic way to look at it, isn't it? And then perseverance, one that came from Eleanor Roosevelt, who once said, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. Mm-hmm. And that was Eleanor. And perseverance actually is the place where your own essay is. And we're going to look at that essay and some of the other individual essays on next week's bonus Conversations on the Coast. You won't want to miss it.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Joining us again this week for bonus Conversations on the Coast is Autumn Stevens, who is the editor of a marvelously titled book, Roar Softly and Carry a Great Lipstick, subtitle 28 Women Writers on Life, Sex, and Survival. It is published by Inner Ocean Publishing. And a pretty fair country writer by the name of Adele Lara, the author of Normal is Just a Setting on a Dryer, and also a columnist for the Chronicle, says of this book, a refreshing original take on life by the agents provocateur of the gender. The beauty of Roar Softly is that the writers fully realize how serious existence is, yet dare to make light of its darker moments. The result is a book that is enlightening in every sense of the word. Now, I have to confess to you that personally, the essay in the book that most moved me was yours. And I'm not saying that because you're on the other end of this line. I'm just saying it because it's true.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Your
publicist was good enough to send me a printout of the fashion in which it appeared in the New York Times. I'm assuming it was a serial, right?
Yeah.
And I read that, and it was in reading that I was interested in doing the book. Now, the thing that impressed me about your piece is its depth and its scope. The title of it is A Body Scarred, A Marriage Healed. And that's exactly the scope of it. It talks about your cancer, but it is not about that alone. It is about your married life, your love life, and your family life.
Right. It's about a lot of things because I think that's how life is. You know, I mean, maybe when you diagram a sentence, you can break it down into little parts. But in reality, you know, everything is all kind of mixed together, you know, like the Cheerios and the bananas and the milk all in one big kind of sludge pot.
I have this picture of one of my Franciscan nuns diagramming sentences on the board.
Well, get that out of your mind immediately.
Yeah. Now, about the writing, I guess it's the second paragraph, or at least it is in the New York Times version. This is just after you discover that you have cancer. Mm-hmm. That night, there was no sleep for me. I lay in the dark, trembling and alone with my fears. My husband could live without me, I knew. He had done so before, by choice. Despite his bouts of ambivalence about our marriage and consequently mine, I have been with and without and then with again this man for more than a quarter of a century. Not all scars are visible to the naked eye. Wow. That's very good.
Well, I like the way you read.
Well, thank you. Sister liked it, too. So, at any rate, it is a piece about all of that and the depth of love. Toward the end, you talk about your husband caring for you. With his own two hands, he bandaged the nothingness that I did not want to see. You've had a breast removed. uncomplainingly drained the plastic tubing that drew pus and blood from my chest, matter-of-factly measured that foul fluid in a cup, and recorded its quantity as the surgeon had, I love this, blithely, sadistically ordered us to do. And, you know, you walk around a lot, poets and writers saying, what is love? And there it is, it seems to be.
Well, yes, and it's, you know, the actions speak louder than words. And it's also, I have to say, when you're lying flat on your back, you have a lot of time to contemplate things like that.
True.
It's an excellent opportunity.
Yeah. Now, your essay comes up, I think we mentioned this last week, in the Perseverance section, and another one that I liked is called The Daughter by Edwige who's a best-selling Haitian-born author. Mm-hmm. And this tells the story of a relationship broken off and what this author remembers of it. That is a relationship with her mother. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about this is that there are certain moments that the writing here really stops you. Early on, this is when she was a little girl, she writes, I remember you making matching dresses for us, she's writing to her mother, always buying a little extra cloth so that when you made yourself a dress, you made one for me too. And I remember people smiling and admiring us in those dresses, and I remember feeling like I was so intricately a part of you in those dresses, like your arm or your leg or even your heart.
I know, isn't that wonderful? You know, she has this gift for describing, sort of, well, she describes things not necessarily so mundane, but in a very matter-of-fact way.
Yeah.
She stops you with one of those sort of like seemingly naive, emotional,
we've got to stop, too. This book is moving. It's challenging. It's often inspirational and sometimes funny, and we didn't get to that, and I'm sorry for that. Go get the book. It's called Roar Softly and Carry a Great Lipstick, edited by Autumn Stevens, who's been with us on Bonus Conversations on the Coast for the last 2 weeks.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.